All right, good evening, everyone. We begin the readout tonight with a political party that is so nihilistic. They're literally willing to destroy the U.S. economy just to own the libs. Republicans are refusing to vote to increase the debt ceiling, which could have catastrophic results. According to a report from Moody's, a prolonged debt ceiling breach could cost up to 6 million jobs, wipe out $15 trillion in household wealth, and surge the unemployment rate to 9%. It is so bad that 6 former Treasury secretaries wrote a letter imploring Congress to extend the limit, saying that allowing an unprecedented default could cause serious economic harm. Confronted with that reality, Republicans say that, of course, the U.S. can't default on its loans, but they refuse to help Democrats in any way. Now, just 2 years ago, Mitch McConnell made it clear that the consequences of default would be dire. But now he's saying, well, Republicans actually have no role to play in seeing the country stay afloat.
So you are expecting then to raise the debt ceiling once again?
Of course, we will never have America default. Well, we raised the debt ceiling because America can't default. I mean, that would be a disaster. The facts are indisputable. This is a totally democratic government. They have an obligation to raise the debt ceiling, and they will do it. Don't play Russian roulette with our economy. Step up and raise the debt ceiling.
Well, it's clear it's a straight-up dereliction of duty. The thing is, Mitch McConnell doesn't actually care what happens to Americans. He sees an opportunity here for Democrats to be forced to go it alone on increasing the debt limit so that he can run ads against them and get that Senate Majority Leader gavel back. That is really all that he cares about. We already saw the beginning of it today with Republicans saying that this was a consequence of a liberal spending spree. Well, that's a flat-out lie, by the way. Part of the reason that Congress needs to raise the debt ceiling is to pay for the previous bipartisan COVID relief bill passed when Donald Trump was president. Not to mention the fact that Democrats helped Republicans to raise the debt ceiling under Trump. In fact, Republicans' dear leader increased the debt by $7.8 trillion with a T dollars, including by jamming through a $1.5 trillion with a T tax cut for the rich. And right on cue, America's most embarrassing retiree emerged from the greens of whatever mediocre golf course he's at right now to egg on Republicans to negotiate with the debt ceiling and force Democrats to, quote, concede all the horror they are trying to inflict upon the future of the U.S. I mean, I'm pretty sure Americans are still recovering from the horror that was the Trump presidency. As usual, it's an entirely hypocritical statement. Trump once suggested getting rid of the debt ceiling entirely. Republicans' argument that Democrats just go it alone may actually be impossible. The House Budget Chair is saying that there is not enough time to either write a standalone bill or to add a debt ceiling increase to reconciliation before October 1st, which is when the government would shut down if Republicans don't pass the combined continuing resolution/debt ceiling bill that passed the House last night. The Treasury will reach its borrowing limit in mid-October without a debt ceiling increase. This comes as Democrats are confronting divisions within their own party. President Biden spent his entire afternoon meeting with Democratic leadership, moderates, and progressives to try to come up with an agreement on his major spending bill. Progressives are clear that they will not vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill until their spending bill passes the Senate, while moderates are balking at the price tag and some of the provisions in the bill, including drug price reforms and tax increases on the rich and climate action. We are still waiting to hear what exactly came out of those discussions today. Joining me now is NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell, Jason Johnson, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University, and Jennifer Rubin, Washington Post opinion columnist and author of the new book, Resistance: How Women Save Democracy from Donald Trump. Leanne, I want to go to you first. What is the status of just the Democrat side of trying to decide what they can get done by October 1st?
Joy, I've been covering the Hill for a long time, and this is one of the most complicated trapeze acts that Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer are trying to navigate. They have President Biden on their side, of course. So by October 1st, they're trying to pass a bipartisan traditional infrastructure bill, a $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill, keep the government open and lift the debt limit, or at least suspend the debt limit. Now, all of these things are colliding into each other, and how they get out of it, it's not completely clear. As you mentioned, a lot of lawmakers are at the White House today talking to President Biden, who is finally engaged in these discussions. And the little readout we've received so far, mostly from Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer, and then separately also some of the moderates, there hasn't been a lot of consensus that has been agreed to, including what the top line number is going to be of this reconciliation bill, if it's going to be $3.5 trillion or if it's going to be less. And he's meeting with the progressives right now, and that's going to be a critical meeting because they are taking a very stark stand in their opposition to this bipartisan bill until they get a vote on this human infrastructure bill. And I don't see how Speaker Pelosi is good at her job, but this is probably one of her most difficult tasks yet.
Leanne Caldwell, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. It is a trapeze act, but if there's one person we know is good at the old trapeze, it is Speaker Pelosi. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that reporting. All right, let me go to you first on this, Jason, because it is a trapeze act that Democrats have to pull off. And let's just be clear. We are only talking about one party doing this because there is only one governing party left in the country. Republicans have made it clear, not just to their base, to the lunatic fringe that worships Donald Trump, but by the way, also to their own donors, to Wall Street, to the business community, to the Chamber of Commerce. Whoever is wide awake understands that Republicans are completely irresponsible when it comes to the economy. The fact that they would even play games with not raising the debt limit means they are off the table as responsible grown-ups, period. So this is about the Democrats. The Democrats have to try to figure out this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. We'll put it up on the screen again. It's Medicare expansion, paid family leave, universal pre-K, free community college, extending child tax credits, child care, et cetera, pathway for undocumented immigrants, all of that stuff. While at the same time, as Adam Gentleson points out, you've got some moderates, some of whom get that good drug company money, who are like, nah, we don't want to do that. Right. They're trying to derail this big bill, which could include everything in theory, including maybe, everything could go in that bill. But they're like, nah, we don't like it. While it's progressives who are basically saying we're willing to play ball with the president. How do you see this all playing out?
So we can't state enough how important this is. It's nice to hear that President Biden is actually sitting down and having meetings with people, but this all goes back to the fact that, one, yes, as you said, there's really only one governing coalition, because if any Republicans in the Senate said they would get along with this, you could get the debt ceiling passed, you could get most of these things passed if Republicans weren't just going to be lockstep with Mitch McConnell. The other problem that you have on the Democratic side, though, is that you essentially have three factions. You have your sort of moderate Republicans, you have your progressive Republicans, you have your moderate Democrats, you have your progressive Democrats in the House, and then you have your conservative Democrats like Joe Manchin. Now, he gets along better with his friends, who are seemingly Republicans, when it comes to issues like the $3.5 trillion that we need for human infrastructure. But if he can't come to an agreement, or he can't be used as a way to sort of convince the other conservative Democrats behind him who are hiding, none of this stuff gets done. And I also want to point out, in the midst of this, Joy, that also we saw the end of police reform happen today. There are a lot of very important legislative things that have to be accomplished in the next 2 weeks, or this could basically, you can't doom a presidency, but legislatively, if they don't get these things done now, they're not going to get it done next year during a midterm election.
And the difference between now, Jennifer, and all the times that I have been observing politics, and probably that you have as well, is that we are now no longer talking about two parties negotiating how to govern the country. We're literally having a conversation about a sort of unicameral government with some sort of a lunatic sort of cult near it that looks like it's in the government, and it's dressed up like it's in the government, and it gets a salary from the taxpayers like it's part of the government, but it ain't in the government. You now have House leadership whipping against not the $3.5 trillion. Let's put that aside. That's off the table. That's reconciliation. They're whipping against the regular old bipartisan Senate infrastructure bill. They're whipping against bridges and roads for their own districts. Jennifer.
Well, You are right. This is nihilism on steroids. These people don't give a fig about the country. They think that this is all about owning the libs, embarrassing the libs, and crashing the country, of course. But you said something interesting. You said there's one party that's governing. The problem is that party can't really govern when you have the filibuster. So
Correct.
if Republicans are going to declare themselves totally irresponsible, not going to even vote on the debt ceiling, not going to do the basic functions, then why give them the filibuster? The filibuster is supposed to promote debate and compromise. They're making the best argument I could make, probably better than I could, that they are totally irresponsible, and it's insanity to give them a veto power over a party that is legitimately trying to govern when they don't have a plan for governance. And their idea is crash the economy, crash the democracy, and just say no to everything. So I think if Democrats can finally get Mr. Manchin to acknowledge that he is not dealing with the 1950s version of the Republican Party or even the 1990s version of the Republican Party, but he is dealing with people who are on a mission to destroy America, maybe that would finally make an impact on him when they're talking about getting rid of the filibuster. They are simply trying to, as you say, own the libs, and if they take the country down the tubes, oh, well, that's the cost of doing business.
Well, I mean, and you know what? I'll make even finer point of it, Jason. I will correct myself. It isn't one party governing. It's one part of the government. That means the House of Representatives, right, which is passing bills like a normal branch of government, which is passing reforms that are supported by the majority of Americans, whether it's climate, police reform. They've already passed all this, voting reform. It's just one piece of the government that's functioning. The Senate ain't functioning either, because within that body, you have Democrats that seem more married to allowing Republicans to wreck the car than to pulling the damn car over. I've never seen anything like this. There is a faction in the Democratic Party, the Manchin, Sinema, and whoever's with them faction, that seems more interested in standing back and forcing the rest of their party to allow Republicans to wreck the economy, to let them ruin the country, to let them end democracy. I don't get it.
Joy, no matter how much pushback Trent Lott occasionally gave to George Bush, no matter how much John McCain was occasionally a thorn in the side of Donald Trump, we have never seen the kind of internal obstructionism to a president of the same party as we've seen between Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and what's happening with Joe Biden right now. What we are seeing between the House and the Senate, which are both controlled by Democrats, as we keep pointing out, and the presidency, which is controlled by Democrats, is like the worst high school group project ever, where you have one side that did all the assignment and they're ready to go, and the other side's like, I don't like the font, and they're just not going to let anything happen. And that's the problem. Now, whether or not Joe Biden can come in and sort of whip everybody into accomplishing their jobs, it speaks to a larger issue here, which is you have one party that understands power, which is the Republicans. They recognize that they have power to obstruct and they have the power to do nothing. And the Democrats can't seem to figure out what power is or how to use it.
Or how to use it. And they don't seem to want to, Jennifer. They don't seem to want to use power. And it's, again, it's not the House. Pelosi's team is ready to work. They're working. They're passing bill after bill after bill. But the United States Senate is now, it's been captured by people like Manchin and Sinema, who I can't figure out their strategy other than let the Republicans wreck the country. And I don't understand why that is what they seem to prefer.
They have convinced themselves that the way they survive in their states is by allowing Republicans to wreck the country. This makes no sense. If Republicans were negotiating for, say, less than $3.5 trillion, or they were negotiating, maybe we modify the prescription drug provision, that would be one thing. That would be showing their constituents back home that they're going to be fiscally responsible, that they're not simply going to rubber stamp those liberal progressive leaders. But that's not what's going on. What they're doing is that they're conspiring with Republicans so that they would have nothing, that the things that even they have run on, that they want to get done, would not get done. So maybe this is some super duper sleight of hand to give Manchin the final say on what's in the bill. But I don't see it right now. I see him being a spoiler, and a presidency, a democracy, unfortunately, rests in the balance.
And when Republicans, if this helps them take back over, Manchin and Sinema need to understand all that Mitch McConnell wants are more far right-wing judges, more Handmaid's Tale judges. And that is all he's going to do. It's all he ever wanted. And that gavel. Jason Johnson, Jennifer Rubin, thank you very much.